Well, good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, depending on which time zone you're joining us today. My name is Omar Arias. I am the manager for the Global Knowledge and Innovation team of the Education Global Practice at the World Bank. I will be your moderator today, and I'm really thrilled actually to be moderating this event, which is part of our series that started 2 weeks ago on teachers' professional development and celebrating the role of teachers, not just in education, but particularly during these very difficult times we've all had to live through the COVID pandemic. Today, the focus of our event is technology and teacher professional development, lessons from innovations across the globe. Let me, before I get into some of the details, just go through a few logistical notes. The session is being recorded and it will be shared online. It's also being, besides Zoom, it's also being live streamed on YouTube. And the link to that, in case you have trouble with the Zoom connection, will be posted in the chat. The structure is we will first have a presentation, then we will move into a panel discussion. Please submit your questions that you have either on the presentation or to our panelists through the chat function in Zoom, and usually you should be able to find it at the bottom of the screen. I think that's pretty much in terms of logistics. So today, well, the event will feature, we're really thrilled to have this event. The focus on technology and the role of technologies in improving teaching is absolutely critical, and it has been made even more prominent, obviously, over the last year. In general, I'm a labor economist, so there's always this concern that humans are in a race with technology, and that history has shown that not always we win. I think, the one thing that the pandemic and the impacts on schools and school closures have shown is that dilemma is not really a real dilemma in the case of education, particularly because, I mean, I think everybody should be at this point convinced that there shouldn't be any idea or concern that somehow technology can substitute teachers. If anything, it has to be a complement to effective teaching. And there have been a lot of work and lots of efforts over the last year in trying to find ways to use technology to maintain some learning continuity, and particularly find ways to support teachers and allow them to continue instruction remotely. And what we figure, our team at the bank, is that why not try to learn from those innovations? And so we partner with 100, and we will hear more about that later, to basically do a global crowdsourcing of innovations that have happened in this space. And we call the initiative Teacher Technology for Teacher Training, and it's T4T. And today what we are going to do is celebrate the champions, the 10 champions that we have identified from this global crowdsourcing exercise, and discuss. I mean, we won't be able to feature all of them, but we will have 2 of them in our panel. And all the materials, all the documents that synthesize the lessons from this initiative so far are being made available online. So we will start with a brief introduction, and I'm very happy to introduce our 2 of our teams that have been leading this initiative, Manal Quota and Tracy. Both of them are part of our core team working on teachers and the coach program and T4T. They will make a presentation and show us a video that summarizes what we have learned so far from this initiative. I'll pass it to you first, Manal.
Great, thank you, Omar, and welcome to everyone. So you've set the stage for us, Omar, which is right. We're here today to discuss the changing role of teachers and how education systems can better support teacher professional development through the use of technology. Now, as many of you may be aware, we are in the midst of a global learning crisis, which is characterized by the fact that even though a majority of students are in school, a large portion of those students are not actually acquiring foundational skills. The World Bank's Learning Poverty Index estimates that around 53% of students cannot read or comprehend a simple sentence by age 10. And these estimates don't even take into account the learning losses that may have occurred due to school closures during the COVID-19 pandemic. So essentially what we're saying is that there's potential that these figures and estimates are actually much higher. And this highlights the central role of teachers. If we want to improve learning and mitigate losses in learning, then we really need to support our teachers. And if there's anything beneficial from the COVID pandemic and its messaging towards teachers, it's two key messages. First, the COVID-19 pandemic underscored the important role of teachers and how they can assist and ensure learning continuity. It also re-emphasized the important role of teachers as the ones who can help support and enhance students' academic and socio-emotional learning. And for this reason, teachers have and always will be at the heart of education. The second thing the COVID-19 pandemic highlighted was the fact that education systems were really unprepared in their approaches to supporting teachers, especially as teachers were shifting their day-to-day roles, adapt to distance or remote teaching practices. So this is an opportunity that the COVID pandemic has highlighted again the importance of how we have to adjust our support systems to teachers, because after all, if they don't have the content knowledge, the resources, or the tools, they can't effectively teach. If they can't teach, students will not learn. So the World Bank has done significant work in trying to identify what are effective teacher professional development practices. And 4 principles really stand out about the importance of delivering tailored, focused, practical, and ongoing teacher professional development support. And if you want to learn more about that, I encourage you to check out our coach program and the principles around that. But today we really want to focus on this question of, okay, these are effective teacher professional development practices, but how can education systems ensure that effective TPD is reaching more teachers at a lower cost and more effectively? And the ultimate question is, can technology help? The good news is the answer is yes. However, if not well integrated into the system, technology will not lead to changes in teaching and learning outcomes. This means that if we want to integrate technology into TPD programs or professional development programs, then there needs to be careful consideration about what is the challenge? Is there a clear purpose for introducing technology? And does it leverage tech attributes in a way that will enhance teacher professional development delivery that traditional practices cannot? And so that's why we're here today. We're really talking about the Technology for Teaching initiative in our efforts at curating and disseminating and generating analytical, technical, and operationally friendly knowledge on how to leverage technology for enhanced delivery of TPD practices or teacher professional development support. And we really want to think about practical and implementable solutions. And that's why we started this initiative, which Omar has already mentioned, Teachers for a Changing World, which we've done in partnership with 100 and through support of the the Partnership for Education, GPE. And we've undergone this large global exercise of reviewing over 400 teacher professional development programs across 80 countries. We've mobilized a team of global experts, practitioners, and policymakers who evaluated these programs based on their potential impact and scale. And today we're going to learn more about 10 of these programs and why they were selected, and hopefully this can translate into lessons learned and practices that practitioners and policymakers can benefit from. Tracy, off to you.
Thanks, Manal. The selected 10 champions show that it is possible to use technology to reach teachers in rural areas, marginalized communities, and conflict-affected settings. They operate at all levels of the system, engaging school leaders, administrators, parents, and local government officials to maximize impact. So, without further ado, let me present to you the winners from the Teachers for a Changing World campaign. Born during the pandemic, Comunidad Ateneo is a social network that provides an avenue for teachers to collaborate digitally. With the main goal of improving teachers' digital pedagogical skills, Comunidad Atenea has adopted the latest trends to reach more than 50,000 unique visitors from over 100 countries in just 1 year. To do this, they use TikTok, Zoom, YouTube live streaming, and WhatsApp. At the height of the pandemic, global school leaders quickly adapted to use bite-sized learning modules that provide principals with practical advice on how to facilitate remote instruction and learning in their schools. The nonprofit designed these modules with the principals in mind. They shared the modules via the internet for those principals who had strong access to high broadband, but they actually delivered it in person for principals without access to internet. Inspiring Teachers' peer coaching platform is the embodiment of a startup. In 1 decade, they began with just 5 volunteers in Uganda and are now partnering with local organizations across 11 countries in South Asia and Sub-Saharan Africa. The nonprofit connects volunteer teachers based in the UK and US to train and mentor teachers in low and middle income settings. Like our last champion, Lead Now started as a small Nairobi-based nonprofit in 2020, and they're now operating in several countries. The nonprofit offers an online and blended delivery model, which supports teachers and principals via phone, online, through WhatsApp group sessions, and they use video conferencing to create virtual communities of practice for these users. The care children receive in the first 1,000 days of their life can determine the trajectory of the rest of their lives. Although access to early childhood education has significantly improved in the last decade, many countries still struggle with providing high-quality early childhood education. One Sky for All Children attempts to address this gap by providing early childhood education trainings to home-based caregivers in China, and they've recently scaled to Mongolia and Vietnam. PerformEd ensures technology is an asset and not a hindrance to the teachers, and has maintained this model while operating at a national scale in Egypt. In any given application, PerformEd first conducts a survey to understand teachers' digital and pedagogical skills, and whether they have access to internet. This enables teacher trainers to focus on teachers' actual needs to provide ongoing and supportive feedback, rather than troubleshooting technological issues. With nearly 1 million users worldwide, Pro Futuro Digital Education has been able to operate effectively at scale. The nonprofit provides learning resources for primary school children through a digital learning platform. But this is not all. They pair this platform with teacher training on it. They provide technical support to teachers, and they've created a monitoring and evaluation system for policymakers so that they continuously assess the effectiveness of the program and the effectiveness of implementation fidelity. To participate effectively in an increasingly complex society, all students must be equipped with 21st century skills. Puentes Educativos aims to foster students' creativity, collaboration, and critical thinking skills across Latin America. The nonprofit engages teachers, principals, families, and community stakeholders through in-person trainings and digital outreach. Teach 2030 shares high-quality pedagogical practices with teachers in the lowest cost and most easily accessible way. How? Through people's phones. The program is designed to meet the needs of teachers in low bandwidth settings, providing bite-sized professional development courses that teachers can engage with a little bit and often. And they're able to earn a certificate for these courses when they complete one. Like Puentes Educativos, Tu Clase, Tu País works directly with teachers and education systems to support the training of more than 250,000 teachers across Latin America. The model supplements face-to-face trainings with virtual learning experiences, providing 10,000 hours of online courses and connecting teachers with certified tutors who are available around the clock. These champions not only put my Spanish lessons to the test, they provide strong examples of implementable approaches that are valuable to existing and future professional development programs, particularly those operating in low resource contexts. Education systems are at a turning point, and the pandemic has forced us all to reflect on the educational models needed for an ever-changing world. If you want to learn more about how to replicate such impactful teacher professional development programs in your context, we strongly encourage you to connect with and reach out to these champions. As we close out this part of the program, please join me in watching a brief video to learn more about the key takeaways these champions have shared from the field. Thank you.
The world's changing, education's changing. How can we better prepare teachers for a changing world? To support their teachers, education systems have to identify the most effective ways to reach all. Technology can help. However, if not well integrated, it will not lead to improvement in teaching and learning outcomes.
El desafío para incorporar tecnología, para la sustentabilidad, para la escalabilidad de los proyectos es tener una comunidad que se anime a innovar.
Technology is not a silver bullet, rather it is one of the tools in the policymaker's toolkit. Let's hear from global experts and practitioners what are the best ways of supporting and preparing teachers using technology.
Stay true to what works, but flex to context.
If people have smartphones but don't have computers, then think of delivering this via smartphone.
Partner with mobile phone companies or other technology companies in designing ways through which teachers could access this platform using the most minimal data.
All of our resources have been designed to function offline and ensure that that's not a barrier.
En el mundo rural, la radio es un canal de comunicación muy importante. Muchas veces es más relevante y tiene una mayor audiencia que la televisión.
Engage with the teachers, listen to what they've got to say, and build something around their perspective. Teachers, if they are to take risks, will make mistakes, but we all learn from that. How else are we going to become better professionals or better people in that sense?
Commit to testing and iterating and only ramp up when ready.
By building a community of practice, of people, of professionals that have high levels of willingness and desire to engage in new ideas, this attracts other people.
Women who at once may have felt isolated in their home-based daycares now feel like they're part of a community of professional educators.
Por eso lo que hemos hecho en cada uno de los países con los que hemos trabajado es trabajar directamente con los equipos de desarrollo profesional de manera de crear en ellos la estrategia y las capacidades para poder implementar y sostener el plan incluso más allá de nuestra propia presencia con ellos.
Nuestro principal objetivo de cara a la sostenibilidad del programa es hacer que los gobiernos introduzcan en su agenda educativa la educación digital.
How can we better prepare teachers for a changing world?
No se trata de recursos, que son muy buenos, que nos ayudan, pero que se trata de personas que se animan a innovar.
The pandemic presents a once-in-a-generation opportunity to transform teacher support. Be bold and seize it.
All right. Thank you so much, Manal and Tracy, for this fantastic summary and introduction to our event today. I now want to move immediately to our panel. We are lucky, actually, to have a very distinguished panel to distill some of the lessons that emerged not only from this crowdsourcing exercise of all of these innovations across the globe, but they also bring their own experience working in this field for many years. We will have with us two policymakers which are in charge of actually trying to do this at scale. First, let me introduce Professor Aisha Razak, who's the technical advisor in the Ministry of Federal Education and Professional Training in Pakistan. She has a doctorate in education and has ample experience supporting EdTech solutions for both teachers and students to improve learning at the national level. Welcome, Aisha. We also have Professor Senias Kundabakura. I hope I got that right. He's a senior lecturer of math, science, and physics at the University of Rwanda. Besides a vast career in teaching math and science, he also spearhead efforts to improve the capacities of teachers in sub-Saharan Africa to teach the sciences and mathematics. So welcome, Senias. Then we also have Professor Cherpin Lin, who is the chair professor of learning technologies and innovation at the Education University of Hong Kong, with a very distinguished academic career in teaching and technology. Has led himself large-scale research in how to integrate education technology into teaching in Singapore, and has been an advisor to us and many other international organizations on EdTech policy. And last but not least, the icing on the cake of our very distinguished panel are two of our 10 T4T champions. We have Deborah Kimati, who's the executive director of Dignitas, and will talk to us about one of the initiatives that is celebrated today, Lead Now. And Dignitas is an award-winning training and coaching program, and their model has been applied now to this application of technology to improve teaching. She has a lot of experience in education and working on child protection issues in East Africa, and is a passionate advocate for the role of school leaders as agents of change in education. So welcome, Deborah. And finally, Simon Graffi, who's the co-founder and CEO of Inspiring Teachers, a peer coaching platform, and again, one of the initiatives that we are celebrating today. He's got a background in education leadership and has worked again in large-scale programs using technology and low-tech solutions to improve education and also health. So with that introduction, I mean, their bios, I mean, will take me more time to go into detail. I want to go first to a question for two education policymakers. So this is a question now to you, Aisha and Senias. And I'll start with you, Aisha. And the question I want to pose you first is, you know, the last year has been a really difficult, tough year for education. And I'm sure that in both Pakistan and Rwanda, this has been felt as much as everywhere else. In supporting teachers during these difficult times, if you can tell us, share lessons of what has worked and what has not worked. And then second, so that's the first part of the question, what are you doing now to prepare teachers as children are back to school, or to maintain some learning continuity while there are interruptions in the delivery of education? Aisha, if I can first go to you, please. Thank you.
Yes. Thank you very much, Omar, and thank you very much for having me. An amazing panel and 300 participants, truly global in nature and very inspiring video. So I'm not sure if I can add more value to it, but I'll certainly try. So before directly getting to the answer to your question, let me very briefly state that Pakistan is a federal parliamentary system. So basically what that means is that education is a devolved subject. There are 4 provinces, there's a federal capital territory, and there are 2 self-administering territories, and every federating unit is responsible for its own education, which basically means that when COVID hit last year, there was no one national or singular country response to the problem. When it comes to implementation in schools and with teachers, it was every federating unit's purview. So with that said, I think the federating unit that really deserves a mention in the brief time that I have is Punjab. And Punjab is worth mentioning for two reasons. One, it's the most populous province in Pakistan. 60% of population resides in Punjab, which means most of your schools, most of your teachers, most of your students belong to this province. Punjab is also worth mentioning, not just because of its size, but also because of the fact that when COVID hit last year, I mean, many of us, including in the federal, capital territory, we were caught off guard. I mean, nobody was ready, right? We keep saying it was unprecedented. We thought we were ready, but we were really not. So Punjab shines because Punjab showed readiness, and there's a reason for that. And they showed readiness not just to start delivering, but readiness to start delivering with some coherence in terms of continuity for its students, but also continuity for professional development for its teachers. And there's a reason. And while it's important to discuss the what, which I'm coming to in a few seconds, it's also important to discuss why it happened like it happened. So Punjab, for several years now, in collaboration with various stakeholders, was getting itself ready for this shift to digital education or to technology in education. So this started several years ago with the very first step was digitizing their textbooks, for instance, for the entire school curriculum. The next step was developing videos for various purposes as supplementary materials for their to go with the lesson planning. And even before COVID hit, one thing that they had started doing, conceptualizing, coincidentally with the help of, I think, a World Bank project in Punjab, was trying to shift their professional development, teacher professional development to technology. So what they have done is that there's a program, it's a very innovative program called the Teacher Support Package. It's basically a school-based, cell phone-based app. It allows you to do some professional development training. There are three components to it. So what they have done very intelligently, taken what works in traditional professional development programs and have taken parts of it that work on technology to technology and have kept parts, for example, peer teaching or communities of practice, face-to-face. They have kept their mentoring element, which is the third element, face-to-face, but with the provision that if there's need, can shift easily to online, to applications such as WhatsApp or Zoom, etc., etc. So what they did, and what I really like about this particular intervention is that what you've already also mentioned in the talks before, keeping the technology follows education and not leads it. So basically shifting parts of what you do with teachers to technology where it makes sense, it's cost effective, it's scalable, there's good feedback because teachers can do, the independent parts of that professional development on their own, in their own time, can keep going back to it. It's connected at the back end with a Moodle-based LMS, where the policymaker or the decision makers are able to see, who's logging in for how long, what they're doing, recording some of their answers to units at the end of each chapter. But at the same time, keeping the human element of the professional development, which we know is very, very important to keep. So I'm sorry, I know I've exceeded my 3 minutes, but I'm going to stop here and maybe cover some part of it in the remaining time.
Thank you. No, thank you, Aisha. And we will have more time to go back to you. Thank you. If I can ask you, Senias, to share your experience from Rwanda on this question and maybe beyond, because I know you've been involving in these teacher training centers for excellence in sub-Saharan Africa. Please.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Last year, effectively, it has been a challenge for the global in the sector of education, where schools were shut down. Many countries embraced the use of technology to see a solution for the challenges that were brought by by the pandemic. So in Rwanda, what happened, the pandemic, when it was coming in, we were just starting a project in which the World Bank was supporting the quality basic education for human capital development. The project was having many components, and among them, there was one to support the professional development of teachers, especially for math and science. So the challenges in those areas were many. I think the most ones were that teachers have, some teachers have a weak background in math and science. And another one is that some lack pedagogical skills. So to us, we developed the project, which was actually technologically based. For us, the technology should mean to equip teachers with more accurate subject content knowledge, and also to provide tools for teaching and learning. The technology also will be used in that project to provide the tools to facilitate the formative assessment during the classrooms. So we learned best practices from different institutions which succeed in teaching and learning and providing teaching materials. I remember we learned from New Jersey Center for Teaching and Learning, which developed scripted lessons. So for us also, we learned from that, and we developed lessons, all lessons from grade 4 to grade 9 in math and science. Those lessons were typically aligned with our curriculum. The current curriculum, which is being used in Rwanda, is a competence-based curriculum. So what we saw is that, and what we believe is that these script lessons will compensate for some teachers with background in math and science, and eventually lower the burden for lessons preparation. So definitely they will improve the quality of content presented to students. We embedded the audiovisual materials in those content in order that they can excite and engage our students. One more innovation which was embedded was the virtual science labs, which is catering for the technology, which is much more intensive in that aspect. So a lot of preparation have been being done. Now we are at the point of launching. Teachers are being trained on the package, and our school year is starting soon. We are making sure enough teachers are being trained and well trained so that we can duplicate the package. And we think that it will help for the teaching and learning for math and science. That is for the case of Rwanda.
Thank you very much, Senias, for sharing that experience. And again, I want to congratulate both of you. I mean, this shock has been, as you both said, unprecedented, and you know, the efforts that you have shared with us already indicate the commitment of the governments in both Pakistan and Rwanda to ensure that education continues to be a priority and some learning continuity. I want to go now to Deborah and Simon, our two champions, T4T champions. And maybe there is the same question to both of you, and we start with you, Deborah. Tell us about your program, the one that we're celebrating today. What are its distinctive features? What makes it special? How are you ensuring that technology is well integrated with teacher professional development and trying to improve teaching in the classroom, even if it is virtual, in the virtual space often? Thank you, Deborah.
Absolutely, thank you, and I'm very happy to share. And a special thank you, first of all, to the World Bank and 100 for this recognition and this opportunity to share a bit more about our work. So Lead Now is essentially the tech-enabled innovation of Dignitas's award-winning training and coaching. We've been developing that over the past 10 years, working with thousands of school leaders and teachers. And Lead Now was developed in 2020 in response to the global pandemic and the real urgent need for school partners to be able to support learners in marginalized communities whilst they were out of school. Our vision at Dignitas is a world where every school is a vibrant place for learners to thrive and succeed. But we also believe that it's not possible to have thriving learners if we don't have thriving teachers. Teachers are able to thrive and deliver quality teaching and learning when they're well prepared, equipped, and supported. And over the years, we've really tried to drill down on what is most effective in the work that we do with school partners. And internal and external evaluation have pointed to 3 critical levers of transformation. Those are instructional leadership, learner engagement, and school and classroom culture. So those 3 pillars form the core of all of our teacher professional development. Throughout the pandemic, while schools were closed, we used a range of tools, digital and virtual tools, to be able to reach teachers. In the earliest stages of the pandemic, we weren't able to have any face-to-face interaction. And as time went on, we were able to establish what is it that we could do, as a panelist has already shared, what is it that we could do well virtually, and what is it that we could do better in person, and really trying to strike that balance. And in fact, our most successful professional development events over the last year or so have brought school teams together in their own schools in small in-person groups of about 4 to 6 educators, where they log in and become part of a bigger virtual cohort. The groups are facilitated virtually by program alumni and by facilitators and coaches. They're sent a resource kit in advance that has everything they need to make the most of the training and the professional development opportunity, whether that's flip charts and markers or even drinks to keep them going. The idea is to replicate the motivation, the celebration, the value of an in-person interaction, an in-person workshop, and to leverage that to be able to deliver virtually and at scale. We now have our fully developed LMS called Lead Now, which hosts all of our school leader and teacher professional development training and coaching content. But we recognize that many of the communities we work with are low tech and low resource. And so because of that, we don't rely fully on the LMS. We have a bespoke chatbot that delivers bite-sized modules and toolkits as necessary. And we lean heavily on WhatsApp communities of practice as places where teachers, educators, school leaders can gather, share around those bite-sized modules and toolkits, reflect, set goals, and receive support. Whichever mechanisms we use for training, all are supported by coaching. And coaching for us is really what makes the difference in practice. Whether remote or in person, our coaching is individualized and school-based, focused on shifting practice that will improve learning. Our virtual coaching toolkit includes ways of gathering data on teacher competencies and teacher practices without having to be present for an observation. And our coaches work to build trust, create safe spaces for growth, and support classroom and school-based shifts in practice. Core to all of this ongoing development has been, first of all, a willingness to listen to school partners, to have their voice be really instrumental in how it develops. Secondly, leveraging data to inform an iterative approach. And finally, seeing challenges as opportunities to learn and to develop together with school partners. This has allowed us to be agile and effective as we've embedded our tech toolkit, remain focused on our vision. And that vision, as I say, is vibrant schools for all learners.
Thank you very much, Deborah, for sharing. I'll now go to Simon, and hearing you talk about the importance of coaching, I think is great because Simon, I think will also share an initiative for which coaching is also at the heart. Simon.
Yeah, thanks very much, Irma. And yeah, again, it's an honor to be recognized, and you're doing terrific work, Deborah. And
Yeah, great to be following you. So talking about coaching, but first, what do we do? So Inspiring Teachers is a non-profit working to help school and system leaders in low resource contexts to give teachers the support they need to get every child in their classroom learning. And since 2010, we've run programs for 5,000 teachers across 10 countries, and we've worked in Africa, Asia, and the Caribbean. And across our work, we've seen a set of persistent problems that keep cropping up and that constrain the effectiveness of teacher training programs and that stop teachers getting the support that they need to succeed in their classrooms and the support that we think they deserve, because we think teaching is noble work. So we think tech applied in the right ways can help solve some of those problems. And we've been developing a suite of apps and tools for teachers, school leaders, and field staff, along with dashboards for system leaders that together we think can help solve against some of those issues. I wanted to unpack what some of those issues are that we see across the delivery chain, pretty much wherever we work, and also speak for a moment to how we think tech can help solve against them. So the first thing is just cascading training properly. So the standard model for rolling out training involves cascading through different layers of the system. Now, often we see systems struggle to share an effective, clear vision of what effective teaching looks like. So an example of how technology can be used to solve against that is, so we've developed a teacher app to distribute frameworks and video examples of effective teaching that any teacher can download. The second piece, so beyond getting cascaded across the delivery chain, what we find is there are just too few coaches in some of the systems that we're working in. And as a result, teachers don't get high quality, regular, frequent support. So teacher coach ratios are often over 200 teachers to every coach. And accountability issues mean that often intended support doesn't actually reach teachers. So we've developed a field officer app that enables time-stamped, geolocated teacher observations, creating transparency across coaching and making it possible for system leaders to receive timely reporting so that they can provide responsive, adaptive management so teachers get tailored support. And then the last piece is just the quality of coaching. So coaching, like teaching, is really hard. And that's why systems end up having specialized coaches, because it's in and of itself, it's a skill that needs to be mastered. But we think tech can change who the coach is. And because of those ratios of 200 coaches to one teacher, it's not feasible for specialized coaching roles to be the way that coaching gets the teachers in most systems. And so we've been developing decision support tools that guide the coaching process with smart observations, with checklists that generate feedback and make it easier to provide high quality coaching. And we think tools like that can make it possible for school leaders and teachers to assume the role of coach. And in doing so, and we're really excited about that because we think that changes the equation and makes it possible for every teacher to get the support that they need to succeed in their classroom. And yeah, that's a bit about our work, and we're looking to build relationships with new partners, and it's a great honor to be on this call with you all.
Thank you very much, Simon. I already see a pattern here just from these two presentations. Again, I want to congratulate you and Deborah and your teams for the fantastic work. Professor Lim, I want to bring you now into the conversation as our researcher, and so we've heard about the importance of feedback. We know from the science of learning, from the science of performance, that indeed feedback is absolutely critical to learning and to improve performance. Technology, as we've heard, can play a fantastic role in helping do that at scale, but it also can help in other ways. If you can share with us from your own research and the research that exists, what factors should policymakers consider when designing and implementing teacher professional development programs using technology and leveraging technology effectively? Professor Lim, please.
All right, thank you very much, Omar. I think it is really great to be among all the panelists. I really wish that like this have been a session probably 1 year before, because at that time the TPD at Scale Coalition for the Global South, which is funded by the IDRC, right? We were doing a landscape review of the projects that we could get access to, right? And like basically what I want to share with you now would be just what we got out of that landscape review, plus the projects that we have now in Indonesia, Philippines, Uzbekistan, Ghana, Lebanon, Ecuador, and Honduras, working with the different coalition members. I think we probably need to keep in mind that when we are looking at technology-enabled TPD, right, we are really trying to be able to enhance equity, which means the access for the teachers to the professional development, regardless of geographical the location, gender, race, or the religion, right? We are also looking at trying to enhance the quality as well, right? So using technology to enhance the quality of the teacher professional development, and also to be able to enhance the efficiency with respect to ensuring that the external efficiency of ensuring that the professional development would be able to prepare the teachers for like what they are supposed to be able to do within the classroom with or without technology. Right, so I would just share like with you 3 categories of factors or what I may call the different like components. I think one is we really need to go to the back to the basics. Like when I say basics, it would mean with or without technologies. Those are the factors that we have got to consider, right, before we look at TPD at scale. We need to be aware of the gaps in competencies. And in order to be able to see the gaps in the competencies, we need to have a teacher competency framework, right, to have a sense of where the gaps are and to ensure that the professional development is needs-driven. We need to actually draw upon effective teacher professional development principles. I think the panelists have talked about coaching, they have talked about professional learning community, they have talked about mentorship, and the opportunities to apply and reflect as well, right? And then, of course, then like there will be a need to monitor and manage, not just by the system and the school, but also by the individual teachers. How do they monitor and manage their own learning? How do they learn how to learn, right? The second category of factors I would say is the TPD at scale principles, right? So we will be looking at one, to be able to design for scale, which means trying to create the opportunities provided by learning at scale, right? Massive open online courses, right through to the open courseware with or without the internet. But what is more important, to be able to localize for inclusion, right? To be able to take note of the challenges facing the context in which the TPD would be implemented in, right? Next one would be to be able to match the technology with the choice, like to be able to match the technology choice with professional learning needs and the context, right? So we need to be aware whether there's internet access, whether there's device access, and then how then are we going to be actually using technology, and what technology are we going to be using? And the last one on the TPD at scale principles would be act, evaluate, improve, right? So from the system perspective, from the program perspective, as we are acting, how do we evaluate formatively, summatively, and how do we improve? And what then are we evaluating? Teacher competencies, student learning outcomes, right? Probably a mixture of both. And the last category would be a conducive ecosystem, where we are looking at policymakers being able to provide that conducive ecosystem or performance appraisal and rewards, right? To provide the time and the space to engage in professional development, to provide a safe and a supportive environment to be able to practice what they have learned. And of course, back to the whole notion of infrastructure, internet connection, and digital devices. Like, how do we actually provide this in order to be able to access some of the technology-enabled courses, may they be internet or non-internet enabled, right? So I probably have just these three categories to share now, but if I get an opportunity to look through all the hundreds projects, I'm quite sure I could be generating more factors and more principles. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Those are three already groups of factors that are incredibly helpful. And I do think actually, if we were to look through our inventory, we will, I think, find that many of our initiatives actually satisfy them. I want to bring now our participants who have been pretty active, I have to say. Thank you so much for sharing your questions and observations. And of course, I'll do my best, but we won't be able, I'm sure, to cover everything. So the team has been helping me sort through the questions and sort of organize them in some commonality. And I want to pick two questions and come back to perhaps Deborah and Simon on this. So there's a question about whether there is data on the impact of your programs on improving student learning. We know that is not always easy, but anything you can share on that question, which is a question of do we actually know that these are working as we intend? And then there's another question which again maybe you can comment on, which is what happens in those contexts where you have connectivity problems. You've already referred to this a little bit, but in many cases electricity is not stable, reliable. How does your approach adapt to these circumstances when there can be disruptions? And Deborah, I see you popped up, so maybe you want to go first.
Sure. Thank you so much, and great questions. I have to say, working particularly with school leaders, the question of learner outcomes is consistently a kind of persistent question. But we've looked at this in a couple of different ways. We do believe that the work we do with school leaders and teachers ties very closely to impact at the learner level. We've looked first of all at knowledge gain in the course of a lesson. And so what we did with a sample of students was give them a pre and post lesson assessment. And what we saw was learners in Dignitas supported classrooms had a 44% gain in knowledge in the course of a lesson, whereas learners in non-Dignitas classrooms had just a 15% gain. Now, it was done on a relatively small scale. We do want to extend that study. But what it shows is there's definitely indication of a significant impact at a learner level. We also, during our work with learners, whilst they were at home during the pandemic, we used literacy and numeracy resource packs to track literacy and numeracy outcomes through the course of school closures, which in Kenya was 10 months for most learners. And what we saw was that through the support from teachers and school leaders at home, and note that we weren't delivering new content to learners, we were trying to prevent learning loss. So we saw that their literacy and numeracy scores stayed steady. So there wasn't a significant drop in their scores, as we saw, sadly, for so many other learners throughout the course of school closures. And the third thing that we're using to try and understand more about learner outcomes is classroom observations. And this is a developing piece. Kenya, as many of you will know, is in the process of rolling out a competency-based curriculum. And as such has 7 core competencies that learners are supposed to be gaining in the course of their schooling. And so we have been testing an observation tool that helps us to see as teacher practices shift, do we see correlating shifts in learner practice? Now, what we've learned so far is that we do. We see about a 20 to 30% gain in how students demonstrate collaboration, communication, self-efficacy, and critical thinking. But it doesn't allow us to track individual learner gains, which is a slightly different question. So there's lots to indicate that there has been positive impact on learners, but it's still a developing piece, I would say. And to your second question on connectivity, we have tried to make sure that everything we have in our digital toolkit is also available offline, so that even if teachers don't have a constant connection, they're able to access the bite-sized modules, the toolkits, and download them for later reference. But also by working in school teams, as long as one person out of a 5 or 6 person team has some level of connectivity, they're able to get the resources and share with the rest of their team.
Thank you, Deborah. Simon, do you want to share, please? Simon, you're still with us? Not sure, actually.
Okay. This far into a pandemic, I should remember not to be on mute when I'm meant to speak. Anyway, thanks so much.
That's probably one of the most common phrases in the virtual world. You're muted.
Yeah. Okay, so clearly the goal of education is to give children the learning they need to thrive. Now, in a lot of teacher development, I think one of the challenges is the time frame at which teacher development programs can deliver dramatic changes in learning outcomes means that it takes 2 or 3 years to run a rigorous evaluation of a teacher development program. So one of the things we're really excited about is some of the work that the team like Ezekiel and others at the World Bank have been doing in developing tools like Teach that measure the quality of teaching with validity and have been used to assess how closely different teaching behaviors correlate with learning in classrooms. And I just wanted to flag that work because there are now in Teach, there's now a tool that we think teacher development organizations can use as a shorter term proxy for learning and a measure of teacher behavior change towards practices that lead to learning. And so that brings me on to kind of addressing the question more directly, which is we've measured and been able to demonstrate that our programs improve teacher self-efficacy in using instructional strategies, creating a positive climate for learning, using checky understanding in the classroom, and also teacher motivation. We've been using the Teach tool and we see promising changes in teaching practices, but we're yet to do a large-scale rigorous evaluation to assess changes in learning outcomes. And we're hoping to do that as schools reopen. We actually had just begun an RCT in Uganda as the pandemic hit. And I think what I'm hoping is a lot of great research projects and innovations will kind of go into use as schools reopen, and we'll see all of the hard work people have been building while schools have been closed coming to fruition. And we're hoping to measure the efficacy of our program from a learning outcome standpoint from the get-go as schools reopen in Uganda. So, and then the second question was about connectivity. And I think it's necessary to design programs that are resilient to the realities of implementation, and like a lack of electricity outages, device access, just the reality that the cost of data is very high in low resource context. Those are some of the constraints that we need to design for. And so our approach is to design applications that work offline, can cache content, making it possible for them to be used and then synced to the internet when the internet is available. And to design programs that are not just dependent on technology. And I think Aisha made it such a good point. This really isn't about technology. We've just got a new set of tools that we can try to use to design better programs. Now, sometimes those tools will break down, and therefore it makes, we have to design programs that are resilient. And I think in low resource context, that means hybrid programs where the same materials are often available in print form for the same, so people have companion applications rather than programs being wholly dependent on devices, particularly for school leaders and for teachers. So that's how we think about connectivity and designing for the realities of and the constraints.
Thank you very much, Simon. And I want to come back soon to Aisha and Senia's with, again, a question about scalability and sustainability of these solutions. But before, there is a question, specific question, but it's an important one. And I'll see if Professor Lim can help us with that. Is to what extent can technology in education technology specifically be utilized effectively for delivering learning for small children, so for early childhood development? And I have friends that struggle actually and have been struggling with the fact that it's just very difficult to keep small kids engaged through online means. So what does the research tell us on this question of technology and learning for small children?
I would love to attempt this, but I'm actually not really an early childhood education specialist, right? But I would probably share with you from the perspective as a school advisor and as a parent of used to be young kids, right? I think we actually need to be aware that when young kids are usually using technologies, especially during the pandemic back home, trying to do some sort of a remote and online teaching and learning, we need to be aware that there need to be quite close guidance by either the parents or the caregivers at home. And it's often like taken for granted that, it's like kids that are below the age of 6, they could just go into the online learning environment and be able to engage in a particular, let's say, a particular module, and to be able to meet their learning outcomes without any support at all, right? So, so I would say that we actually need to be more aware of the role of parents, the role of caregivers, right? When we are looking at technologies in early childhood education, if we are like talking about it outside school, but of course, if we are talking about it like inside school, I have been seeing quite a lot of the teachers, especially during the pandemic, where they could not go out on field trip and all. They actually like make use of virtual reality and augmented reality to actually bring so-called the field trip into the classroom, right? And that is quite an exciting like use of technologies that I've actually seen. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And I actually, what you've pointed out is actually one key message that is coming in a report that we will publish probably by the end of this year or early next year on the science of early learning. And we do have a discussion there on this question. And it's indeed the question, with the point you make about the need for support is even greater than for older children. Thank you very much. I want to go back now to Aisha and Senias, and the question I want to pose to both of you is, in doing this at scale, meaning using and effectively leveraging technology for supporting teachers, for enhancing their capabilities, the potential is there, but when you try to do it at scale, you need to procure, you need to maintain, and you need to worry about how to utilize, for teachers to be capable of utilizing effectively whatever solutions we make available. What are you currently doing in trying to ensure the sustainability of tech-based solutions to improve teaching in classrooms? And maybe I can start with you, Aisha.
Thank you, Omar. And I think the first part of your question is really also the beginning of the answer to your question. So very briefly, three things. I think, I mean, we all want to be in a world where everyone has unlimited and really good connectivity. We all want to be in a world where people have access to the right devices that they require, teachers and students and softwares and whatnot. But the fact is that, I mean, that is the, maybe the longer term goal. And there are things that the governments around the world, as I know, are doing to get to at least a decent place, but that's still a very long way to go. But what I do want to highlight in the short and the medium term, look, digital skills, knowledge of digital skills, and the uptake issue is a real issue. I mean, if I think about Pakistan, you have to remember we have teachers where you have at least 3 to 4 generations of teachers that are teaching right now in schools. So what that means is that you have anywhere from your baby boomers to what you call maybe Gen Z is too young, maybe the next 2-4 years they will be in your teaching force, but at least you have your Gen X and Gen Y. So if you think about it, you have people from teachers from your digital tourists who, if you ask, have only a phone set and they hardly use it and use it only to call friends and family, to the other end of the spectrum where you have your digital natives and the technoholics who have extreme very different set of digital skills. They have very different comfort levels with use of technology and very different exposure to different kinds of ICTs that are useful and usable in this kind of work, right? So I mean, that is to me the human issue. The digital skills issue is a real issue whenever we talk. I mean, I know policymakers, I work with ministers who really like to think that technology is the silver bullet. And they like to use, just this morning, I heard them using, technology and leapfrogging. It's like, it's a silver bullet, you just throw in technology and everything is resolved, but that is not it. And so, and with that, so anything with technology has to be really intelligently designed, keeping this in mind, for it to be cheap, for it to be scalable, accessible. It has to be simple enough. It has to be sustainable. Phones seem to be we have anecdotal evidence, we have some quantitative evidence that phones at least seem to be something that provide you that kind of medium. Another thing that I want to highlight is a program that we are in the process of piloting in Pakistan right now. So in one of the provinces and in the Federal Capital Territory, I really love the program, not just because of what it does, but also how it delivers. And it's the teaching at the right level approach. It's a global program. I won't get into the nitty-gritty of it. It has a lot of digital presence, so anyone who's interested can maybe Google it, look for it. What I want to highlight in it is the tech supporting the education piece and not leading the education piece, like I said before. So what they have done there are various components of the program, but one of the component, and I think every edtech solution has to think about it, what it is, a really laser sharp focus on the exact problem that you're trying to solve. So the point is not to substitute the teacher. The point is not to replace the teacher. I think that is the kinds of conversations I used to hear some years ago when we were starting out with these technological solutions in Pakistan. The point is to to scaffold and to support the teacher. So, you know, knowing exactly where it is that the teacher needs support and needs scaffolding, and then providing them the right solution, the right content through the right medium. So what this program that we are in the process of piloting right now does is that one of the components where it uses, you know, a bit of technology, again, based on your phone, offline, bite-sized pieces, things that do not require constant connectivity, but really helps teachers with components in managing pieces of their instruction, where it can save them time, where it can save them transaction costs, for example, and just makes it easy for them to do their everyday work. And with that also, and again, it's an RCT, it's an impact evaluation. We're very keen on looking at data and making sure that this is not just, you know, this doesn't just look good on paper, it also works for everyone. We're doing a lot of research around it. So not just, you know, process research, but also outcome research, and really looking at the uptake issue. So giving teachers the opportunity to use either the technology bit of, you know, piece of it, or the manual piece of it, and then really looking at why it is that certain teachers choose to use the manual piece and not the other piece. You know, doing a lot of human-centered designing around it, and really seeing what works, what doesn't work, and what makes uptake easier, and this sort of solution scalable. So I'll just stop at that.
Wonderful. Thank you. Thank you very much. Aisha, Senias, what can you share with us on this question of sustainability of these tech solutions to improve teaching and learning?
So thank you very much. There is someone, let me start by responding to someone who asked the question about the devices Rwanda is using. So the package I was talking about, the minimum we are offering to teachers is just a laptop and a projector. That's the minimum, so that the script lessons we have developed, the teacher can access them through the computer and then be able to project. And then if he has access to internet, he can just go through and use these virtual science labs and other tools. We are also embedding, in terms of other devices, tools which can help to deal with the project-based learning approaches. These are robots. We are equipping some schools with small robots and 3D printers. However, this question of sustainability, if really we want to develop something which will last, it's better effectively we go even offline. That's why our materials, which are even developed in OneNote software, they can just access them through computer offline, and then you can even export the materials into other formats, which can be printed offline and then be used. Videos also, you can download them and then keep them on the computer, so that you cannot rely every time on the internet. However, we know the key issues really, which are key issues and challenges for teachers when we are using technology. The one is effectively internet. And the internet, for example, in these developing countries, it's a big issue. And another one is just for another issue is the technical support. We don't have really people who can support directly the teachers at their school when they are facing a problem of technology. Another one is a better training for those teachers. So for the first one regarding the internet, what we are trying to do in Rwanda, the government has tried his best. I think for many schools which are having science teaching, like they provide smart classrooms, and in those smart classrooms, the government is giving a package of internet regularly in terms of the support they are providing on a regular basis. We think it will a little bit last. However, when those teachers also are coming for the training, we advocate that they can also get bundles so that they can be able to do assignments while at home. Now, tackling the problem of sustainability, I think you have to make sure you train many people, and then the technology or the tools you are developing also, those teachers make themselves. For us, teachers are the ones developing those scripts, although at the beginning we got help from abroad, but later on they were the ones to develop. And then we suspect that those who developed understand much more better the functionality of those tools. And those who were not part of the team of the development, they are being trained, and we make sure the training is being made in a nice way so that they can really duplicate those lessons. So we developed also a tool for monitoring. The monitoring and evaluation will be done by local officers of education. We provide with them tablets in which we put a tool to evaluate. It means to go in those classes and see if really teachers are using those equipment. Because you can develop tools, but teachers maybe do not use them, and that will be a problem. So we think the information we'll be getting from those monitors will just inform us how efficiently and effectively those tools are being used. So in all of those things, I think the leadership of my country is really doing well, because we started with 1 laptop per child, and then recently also we launched the 1 laptop per teacher. So I think all those infrastructures will help to boost the technology in our schools. So thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much. And I'm kind of conscious of time, and we still have one final session towards the closing, but I think we still have maybe we can spend 2-3 minutes for a question that I actually want to pose now to Deborah, Simon, and maybe Professor Lin too. If I can test your synthesizing abilities, and maybe you can take a minute at most to share with again Aisha and Senias here are working day to day with policymakers that are trying to implement these solutions at scale in environments where you have issues of low connectivity and disruptions that come from unreliable electricity, etc. If you were to advise them briefly, what are the 1 or 2 things that they should, policymakers should keep in mind in trying to implement these solutions at scale? What would be your advice? And I can start maybe with you, Professor Lin, and then I'll go to you, Deborah, and then Simon.
I think probably 2 key advice. The first key advice is we really need to understand the opportunities provided by technologies. So as we try to achieve professional learning at scale, what technologies could we tap upon, right? What are their opportunities and what are their limitations? But as I've said, we are not just interested in the opportunities of technologies, we're also interested in the context in which the technologies will be used. So the awareness of that context and the participants, and so the participants being the teachers, right? It's like the context that they are in with respect to location, with respect to language, religion, gender, etc. That must be taken into account as well. So it is back to this whole notion of trying to be able to design for scale, right? To tap upon that opportunities of technologies, but yet to be able to localize for inclusion, right? So we cannot have a one-size-fits-all solution. So that would probably be my main key, like my main so-called takeaway, right? That for specific groups of the teachers, they might need very tailor-made professional like development within their context, and within that context they actually need the support, right? So one really good example is the one in the Philippines, right? The digital early literacy and numeracy program, right, whereby they have a local education officer that act as that so-called the expert or the facilitator to be able to localize the program at the school cluster level. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. Deborah.
Yes, thank you. And just to say that completely resonates. I think culture, context, and language are three huge pieces we can't ignore. And I think if I was to make one recommendation of my own, it would be that policymakers and indeed all of us as actors need to think holistically about the challenge of embedding technology in teacher professional development. The focus can't just be on provision of devices or establishing connectivity. We must work with school leaders and teachers to really uncover the barriers. And despite the potential complexity that brings, design solutions in a way that addresses those barriers. For school leaders and teachers, we've discovered it's important to not just think about apps and devices and connectivity, but digital literacy or simply digital confidence and their comfort level with using tech, their autonomy to be able to act on what they're learning and shift practice as the tools are probing them to do. And finally, that accountability and support at a school level, whether that comes from a district education officer, curriculum support officer, or from somebody else. What's that mechanism for accountability and support, and how are we making sure that everything goes beyond training to actually seeing shifts in practice, and shifts in practice that are meaningful in improving the quality of teaching and learning?
Thank you very much, Deborah. And you now, Simon, please. You might be muted again.
That's, yeah. So I think we need to think about scaling as a curve, not as this kind of linear thing. And in order to have something that works at scale, we need something that works at small scale first, that fits within the constraints of implementation at large scale. And I mean resource constraints, capacity. So we need to embrace constraints, including cost constraints. We need a model that is cost effective, but we need to have a very clear view of exactly what the behaviors that teachers, that school leaders, the coaches who are supporting them need to adopt. And then we need a clear theory of change for how those behaviors will be supported, made to happen, so that the mechanisms that actually lead to improved learning are being supported by kind of a chain of behaviors, so that programs can be implemented through existing system structures. And I think the implication of all of that is that it's really a design challenge. Designing a model that is replicable within the constraints through the system, based on the evidence for what works. And I think, so the recommendation is not to try and start by scaling, but instead start by trying to hone that model, iterate, and when the model is working. And I think TAL's a good example. TAL didn't start by going to national scale. It started by testing and iterating and working and proving its efficacy, and then it's been replicated on merit. And I think that's what we need. We need to replicate that kind of journey, and that journey is a curve.
Wonderful. Well, with that, I want to now thank you again all, Aisha, Senias, Deborah, Simon, and Professor Lin. It has been You have delivered on the promise of a really rich and fantastic discussion. I have learned a lot. Thank you for joining. And now to close the event, I want to invite Danny Gilliland from 100, who has been our partner in crime in the global contest of teachers for a changing world. And Danny, your experience, you're head of growth at 100, and which means that, you know, I guess you're responsible for thinking about this question of scalability and how you find ways to make sure that you know, solutions, for instance, in this space, but others do reach scale. And you've had experience working in the technology world on this area. What can you share with us, and what are your key takeaways from what we have learned through this initiative in which we have partnered, but also what you have heard from the discussion today? Danny.
Yeah, thanks, Omar. Thanks for having me, and thanks to the World Bank for putting this together, both this event and the whole project. It's been about 2 years in the making since I first met Cristobal, so amazing to finally be here, and congrats to all the T4T champions, but also Deborah and Simon. Thanks for joining us today and for your amazing insights. So Omar, to answer your question, yeah, of course, you know, this has been an amazing learning opportunity for us as well. There's always a lot of discussion around ed tech and how can technology improve or assist learning, but so rarely is it focused on teachers. So the ability to shine a spotlight on this has been both a very proud moment for us, but as you said, a great learning experience as well. My takeaways actually from the project were really well reflected today, and I think that they were reiterated and explained very well by all the panelists in different ways. So I'd say the first, and this again sounds obvious, especially now, but you know, before the pandemic, maybe there were some tendencies to take teachers for granted or start to point the finger at them in different areas. But I think what we've all learned and what we all really cherish right now is the role of the teacher and how incredible they are and how much they've had to adapt and change and how they've been able to try to even maintain learning, let alone improve learning outcomes during the pandemic. So teachers come first and technology is supplementary to what they're doing. So it's not to say that technology doesn't provide a lot of opportunities, but we have to be really intentional about how technology is supplementing the teaching and learning experience. And that's actually the second one, is that it does provide a lot of opportunities. I mean, we heard some amazing things here that wouldn't really be imaginable without technology, and in a lot of cases weren't in place before the pandemic, but are front and center now. So things like, I loved what Simon said about cascading support and the ability to relatively quickly turn teachers into coaches and create a training model where they can learn asynchronously themselves and practice, watch videos. So these types of things were not really heard of, you know, a few years ago, and now they're impressively everywhere and retraining and training teachers to improve their practice and obviously learning outcomes. The next is assessments, particularly formative and summative, things that are really hard to do in traditional or without technology. And those types of learning environments, it's very difficult to do that, both for students and for teachers. But now we have ways to much more easily provide that feedback and improve and train as they go, and factor in all that feedback as teachers deploy whatever solution we're helping them with. And then finally, you know, while these programs are amazing and there's a lot of opportunity, they must be designed and implemented very carefully and well. And there's I would say no technology solution that is just plug and play everywhere in the world. You always have to factor in the local context. And by that, you know, and a lot of these were mentioned in greater detail than this, but first, just from a technology perspective, of course, you know, connectivity, data costs, online and offline access, teachers, device access, and then also digital skills. So where they are, I think Ayusha's point on that was very well taken. And we hear, even here in Finland, I heard that was a huge challenge of, you know, basically turning younger teachers into informal training for more experienced teachers that just didn't have the same level of comfort with technology. And then as you're rolling out the solution, ensuring that you're setting up all the tools and the processes for evaluating, learning, and improving whatever you're implementing. The accountability and support that Deborah mentioned, I think is very critical, because things can fall apart so easily, that having that in place before you start going is so important. And then again, I think Simon's comment about theory of change and how you actually plan to change their behaviors is, that's the end goal, right? And so to make sure that you have a plan for how you want to get there versus just, saying, hey, we have this great solution, let's roll it out everywhere and hope for the best. So those are my 3 takeaways with a little bit of context, but really amazed by everyone and happy to be here, and very excited to see where all these programs go from here.
Thank you very much, Danny. You've made my job of closing easy, because there's really little that I could add. I think you've summarized the key takeaways very well. Maybe there's only one thing that I would add as we close, which is that it came up in different ways, perhaps not very explicitly in the discussion, but we did have it in the questions, which is, as we think about leveraging technology, particularly low tech or low connectivity solutions to improve teaching, whether supporting teachers or to enhance their capabilities, we need to not forget and have actually as a central goal equity. We need to ensure that whatever solution we design or implement do not leave those that will start with a disadvantage behind, whether it is disadvantage to access the technology or because they have disadvantage at home. One thing we've learned again from the pandemic is that resilience in education systems go hand in hand with equity. They're 2 sides of the same coin. We cannot have resilient systems if we don't have equitable systems. So we need to make sure that technology is well utilized to improve equity. I want to thank you, Danny, and 100 for this wonderful partnership. I want to thank our panelists. Again, I want to thank all the participants for connecting and joining us today, and of course the team from both the bank and 100. Celebrate all these champions. Please keep up the good work. You're heroes. Thank you so much for the efforts and all the learning that we draw. And I want to end inviting everybody to join to the last event in our series next Tuesday. Actually, it's Teachers Day. So that day we will end with an event that will celebrate teachers again as the central piece and heroes of the efforts to maintain learning continuity during this pandemic. The event is at 9:30, and we will have leaders from UNESCO, UNICEF. We will have teachers, students joining us. So please join us again next Tuesday. Thank you very much for your time, and have a good afternoon, evening, or morning. Thank you.